what I've discovered is the quickest way to find the resonant frequency, if you will, of those that can actually add that value to your life or be part of that journey is to do something very unique, which is to focus more on your aspirational identity than your current reality. Okay, so if you focus more on your aspirational identity than your current reality, what will happen is you'll create an emotional tie to the new you rather than the current you. And because of that, essentially what happens is your emotional congruency ends up lining directly up with your aspirational identity. Therefore, you become the thing that you really forecast for. And the reality is that is for you. You know, they call it personal and professional development for reasons because it's deeply personal, right? So rather than looking for people to believe in your dream and to believe in the new you, just go become the new you and everybody else will follow.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear. Thank you so much for being here. I have a great guest today, and I'm really excited about this one. My guest today is the one and only Stephen Scoggins. And after overcoming homelessness, Stephen Scoggins became an award-winning, successful, serial 9-figure entrepreneur. That's right, 9 figures of multiple businesses, a highly sought-after international speaker. He's the host of the hit podcast Unstoppable and founder of Scoggins International, a national home for media, events, and empowering education. And as part of that endeavor, Stephen has taken over 30 years of setbacks, failures, breakdowns, losses, successes, and comebacks, and transparently uses them to provide simple yet effective step-by-step exercises to help entrepreneurs, leaders, and achievers become unstoppable in all they do. And his insights have been featured in NBC, CBS, Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine, and many other notable outlets. You can learn more about Stephen at stephenscoggins.com. Thank you for joining me today, Stephen. This is great to have you here.
Anytime I get to hang out with my brother, I'm good. It's like super easy for me. Thank you for the kudos, by the way. It's always a very warm introduction. I'm super grateful. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's honestly my honor. I've had the pleasure of being on your podcast as well, Unstoppable, which is a great show. It's one of my favorites. And after this episode, please check that out. And I recently had the opportunity to speak on your stage in North Carolina.
What'd you think?
I loved it. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, so Stephen and his team, which they were amazing. They did my demo reel as well as a few others, and it turned out incredible. I mean, I couldn't have asked for anything better. So I just wanted to give you kudos on that and start there because you've come a long way from where you started, my friend. Your story's amazing.
It's been a minute. It's been a minute for sure.
Right. So can you tell us, can we just start from the beginning? Because that's always the best place to start, from where you were as a kid. I know you went through some challenging times then. Sure. Can you share a little bit about that and how that shaped you?
I'll share about it really brief, only because it's a topic that I've covered a lot on a variety of podcasts, and there's lots of content there. But in short, I think I struggle with a lot of things a lot of people struggle with nowadays. And I think it's growing up in an environment where there's enough toxicity that prevents you from living the life you were meant to live. Instead, you're living the life that other people tell you have to live or you should live. And I've discovered that the discovery process is more important than the living process. So yes, I was homeless for a time. That had a lot to do with my own mindset. Pride and arrogance. I was very fortunate that I didn't get involved in drugs and alcohol because that would have made it more complex and probably made it more difficult. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I stayed there because I was refusing to get help. Mm-hmm. I absolutely refused to surrender and let people know I was in not in a good place. I didn't want people to know that the guy that had made a bunch of money the year earlier wasn't that guy kind of thing. So I was more focused on the appearance of doing well rather than actually doing well. And I find that a lot of us nowadays actually are stuck there, especially in the world of social media and all kinds of stuff. It's like you see everybody's highlight reel, right? But what you rarely see is like what's really going on behind the scenes. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like that in order to get true transformation, you have to be truly transparent with yourself and be radically honest. You know, so yes, I grew up in a broken home, a father alcoholic, a mother struggled with some mental, what seemed to be mental illness, raised by my grandmother, went through a, very difficult childhood, I guess the best way to say it. But I also realized that's not uncommon anymore, right? The environment that I grew up in happens to a lot of people. I think the only core difference is I decided not to stay there.
Yeah.
I decided to take some steps to kind of get out of that situation.
Well, that's a powerful. I think that's an important thing too, because you mentioned that you're not the, that's very common now, and a lot of people are coming out about that. But I know that from the experience from a lot of people who experienced some of those things, and I didn't have a troubled childhood, but I did have a lot of an anxiety disorder growing up, and I thought I was alone. So I know that people feel like they're alone. So I mean, the power of vulnerability is helpful in helping other people at least to maybe come out on that step and know that they're not alone. Are you finding that too?
Isolation is dangerous.
Yeah.
Just in general. And I think one of the greatest deceptions on the planet is the fact that you are alone when so many people struggle with the same things.
Sure.
Most of us struggle with imposter syndrome to some degree. Most of us struggle with self-worth to some degree. Most of us struggle with the fear of the unknown or not being able to kind of like really articulate kind of, the next step of what's next. Most of us don't really have a clue about where we're heading or understand the process to help us understand how to actually discover those things for yourself, because there is a process of discovery that's very helpful. So I find that a lot of us struggle with a lot of the same things, but because we don't talk about it or we don't share it with people that can actually help us, we put ourselves in a bad situation. I find that most of us, unfortunately, tend to share that type of information with the wrong person or the wrong people, right?
Oh, yeah. Can you kind of expand on that part a little bit? Like, why are we so reluctant to lean into the communities of support that will help, and maybe leaning into the wrong communities? Why are we doing that?
I think it's a threefold. So if I look at my life and I kind of go backwards, the first impact that I find is that most of us, because we've had experiences sharing our dreams or ambition and then being crushed by people that we know, like, and trust, we're scared to say it again, or we're scared to say, hey, this is my new thing. So that's one. Number two is a lot of times we don't want to let the people that we know, like, and trust down. So we want, my father said this, and I've said it on a few other shows, but it just stuck with me for the longest time, because it was the biggest mind mess that I had to overcome, which was Scoggins don't get ahead, they get by.
Yeah.
Right. His experiences up until that point basically said, I can try as much as I want, but I'm not going to gain any ground. But he wasn't taking accountability for the decisions he was making. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Whereas for me, I was very fortunate to have a mentor. He's like, do you want to learn to think like me, or to continue thinking like your dad? Right. Not everybody has that, which is another reason why I'm trying so hard to be Steve Mark, who was my first mentor. Steve Mark to as many people as possible. Right.
Yeah.
The third thing is I feel like because we can't articulate our dreams, we don't do a good job of expressing them. And as a result, because we're not able to express them, we're not able to find the resources to help us express them. So, for example, I would not have known in the moment to express my dreams and ambitions to Steve Mark until after that had been a new level of trust and, I guess, reciprocation kind of built. What I've discovered is the quickest way to find the resonant frequency, if you will, of those that can actually add that value to your life, or be part of that journey, is to do something very unique, which is to focus more on your aspirational identity than your current reality. Okay. So if you focus more on your aspirational identity than your current reality, what will happen is you'll create an emotional tie to the new you rather than the current you. And because of that, essentially what happens is your emotional congruency ends up lining directly up with your aspirational identity. Therefore, you become the thing that you really forecast for. And the reality is that is for you. They call it personal and professional development for reasons, because it's deeply personal. right? So rather than looking for people to believe in your dream and to believe in the new you, just go become the new you and everybody else will follow.
Yeah.
I know it sounds cheesier than not, but it's exactly how it works.
Well, it is. I mean, I know from experience that works, and it's counterintuitive, but it's so hard to implement that. It's so hard to like get out of. I know Dan Sullivan, he calls it the gap in the gain, right? You're looking at where you want to end up, but what kind of tools or what kind of do you have any exercises or anything like that people can get into to help them look more at that?
Yeah, so
future self.
I think there's 3 that I use every single day. One is the importance and the focus on a routine. Okay, I kind of get up and do the same thing routinely almost every day. I get up around 5:30 every single day. I will spend time in prayer and meditation myself personally. That happens before I get up and do my bathroom break and kind of get myself together. And then I will typically do a personal development skill on the way to the gym and while I'm at the gym. So I'll focus on one area of life every single day. So Mondays is financial, Tuesdays is spiritual, Wednesdays is emotional, right? And I break it up so I can get balance. But even going back to that routine, the second thing that I do is I have repeated mantras that I say to myself in conjunction with the prayer, right? So for me, meditation is hearing and praying is saying. So praying is asking, requesting, or validating, or gratitude, or things that you're expressing outward, where meditating is you're internalizing inward, right?
Yeah.
My internalizing inward is a very, very simple mantra. I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am wise, and I'm a steward of the Most High. I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am wise, I'm a steward of the Most High. I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am wise, I'm a steward. And I was doing that before any of those things were true.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And because I was telling myself that, or basically teaching myself that, what was happening was I was becoming that over time. It's a source of programming, right? If you're going to overwrite the programs that are already inside of you, you have to start with putting new programs in place of the old programs. So whereas I used to go, well, I can't do anything. I'm too short. I'm now bald. People won't like me. My business is going to fail or whatever. All that fear and that scarcity stuff never, ever feeds your advancement. The only way to feed your advancement is to program yourself with stuff that's going to feed your future, honestly. So I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am wise, I'm a steward of the Most High. It won't take root initially because you're like, this is quirky, this is weird. But at some point in time, all of a sudden it'll become a deep breath. I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am wise, I am a steward of the Most High. Like it will become less programming and more DNA centric. It becomes part of who you are. Once you've got those 2 factors in place, your routine and your core mantra of programming, so to speak, then the third category is putting that programming into action. So taking a step each day to become healthier, wealthier, wiser, and a better steward of the Most High. So basically you're taking the program and you're putting it into practice. And I find if you do those 3 things in that order, you will basically take a step every single day. And there's 365 days in a year as far as we know from the Gregorian calendar, okay?
Right.
So we take 365 steps. If I was to start right here and take a step every minute for 365 minutes, I'm going to end up halfway down the block and I won't be in front of this camera anymore. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
By definition, I am no longer stuck, which is nothing more than not making progress. By definition, I'm becoming unstoppable because I'm consistently making progress.
Yeah, I love that. I love that thing because for its simplicity, but its effectiveness. Because I feel like a lot of people maybe can get into those first 2, like the morning routine and the mantras, but the action part for some reason is the thing that gets people up. But those small actions, I mean, we get so I feel like we get distracted so much by the big dreams that we might have, or that ethereal whatever. Cloudy vision of what we might want to be, that we just fail to focus on that small step that's right in front of us that we just need to take today.
Well, look at it this way. Actions always follow beliefs. Actions always follow beliefs. You're not going to take an action that you don't believe benefits you. So at the end of the day, if you can have a healthy mantra in place and choose to do an act of service, choose to have an act of wisdom, choose to have an act of handling your finances better, like just choosing the basic acts will increase your belief over time. They say that focus creates belief, belief creates action, action creates results, right? If you're used to going the opposite way, where your results are breeding your beliefs and your beliefs and your actions, you're never going to get out of your own way.
Right.
However, if you focus on the future you rather than the current you, your beliefs will follow it with action. So you'll begin to take actions that re-incentivize the person you're trying to become rather than the person that you are.
Oh, that's fascinating. I love that, the simplicity of that. And I know that, I mean, from your background, I mean, obviously you went through a lot of challenges growing up. I mean, and all of those things. How did fear show up for you when in your younger life? Because I know you started working with your dad when you were 12. I mean, that's when you started working.
Yeah, I was super young.
Yeah. So how was so getting started in that? What was your experience of fear like back then? And
oh man, it's hard to say. So I'm like everybody else. There are things that scare you, right? Most of the time, the fear comes from the unknown. I've realized that most times the fear of the unknown, it never is as good as you think it's going to be or as bad as you think it's going to be. It's always somewhere in the middle, and the somewhere in the middle always creates a growth spurt. So over time, I basically would turn fear into more of a fortification in that it becomes a tool to help me say, right, if I have a fear or I have a holdback or something that's kind of stalling me out, that's an opportunity for growth. Okay. My mind is doing the fight or flight thing. You know, it could be financial, it could be business, it could be relationships or whatever. What I've realized is if you're going to live a life worth living, then you're going to have to push past the fear to understand where that foundation comes from. Once you find the foundation, then you can uproot the root. So the fear of financial scarcity. Okay. I discovered that the fear of financial scarcity would come up with me anytime that I felt like my business was about to get hit, which would then have me act out emotionally rather than logically, which is the last thing you want to do in business. Okay. So then when I had results of that, every so often I would have to say, hey, where's this coming from? And then I'd realize it came back all the way back from a teenager. Every time the lights got cut off, or I had to take a cold shower because there was no power, or I watched roaches crawl across our food or whatever. Like there had been a sense of me that was always based in scarcity. Yeah. What I've done now is I don't expect scarcity. I don't expect failure. I don't create a magnetic tie to that. Instead, what I do is I try to tie it to a magnetic future. So where I want to be. Now, the first 2 or 3 times you try to put this in practice, you're going to have something that's going to go berserk. You're going to be like, well, my evidence says that I can trust my fear more than I can trust my faith. That's your fear actually testing you against your faith. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Right. When you do enough behaviors enough times and you choose faith over fear on a consistent basis, all of a sudden the faith will take root and the fear will dissipate over time. Yeah. Well, what was your trigger point to find that faith? Because it's so easy for us to, like, get in that zone of like everything's going wrong, or, there is all this scarcity. Yeah. There's no path to abundance, and I'm just going to be miserable. Maybe because it's the discomfort I know versus the discomfort I don't yet know, or that unknown. What was your trigger point to find that faith? Well, for me, it's a little bit interesting, All right, so I've gone through a few hard times in my life, okay? Sure. However, I also realized not that long ago, this is probably 5 years ago, that even though I'd been through hard things, the hard things made me better, and it always worked out to my benefit in the long run. Even though at the time, it scared the ever-living crap out of me. I thought I was losing my business, or I thought I was losing a key relationship, or I thought I was losing my house, or any of these circumstances. I've learned that if I lean into what's going to be and saying, hey, look, I'm going to hold this with an open hand, a surrender, if you will, that in the moment of surrender, that sacrifice in the surrender ends up creating the success long-term. So it's like playing the long game. And then when you play the long game enough times, you're able to go back and say, hey, look, I'm going through a really hard time right now, but here are all the other times that God in my face showed up. Yeah. All the other times when all of a sudden the problem got solved at the last minute, or it became something different. I think as human beings, we have to learn that we still have to live our life, right? And your life is not over based on a single moment, right? It's not based on, okay, well, I made a bad business decision here. It's going to cost me everything. Great, rebuild.
Right.
Like there's nothing stopping you from building. Walt Disney went bankrupt 8 times. You know
Did
what I'm
you
saying?
really?
It's like,
Wow. 8
just
times.
go after it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, I mean, however, case in point, had Walt Disney not gone bankrupt so many times, he would have not had the financial wherewithal to actually build Walt Disney, the entity, what became one of the largest holding companies on the planet.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like everything leads to the thing. If you're so focused on the thing, you'll never get to the future thing.
Yeah.
So rather than focus on the thing, focus on the future thing. And then you'll have the future thing before you have the thing.
Yeah. So you have this default level of optimism. It sounds like you just have this, even in the midst of the significant challenges you might be going through, you have this default of optimism. Was that always something that you've had?
No, it's something I had to cultivate.
Yeah.
In fact, I would dare say that most of us, we're optimistic for others, but we're pessimistic with ourselves. Right. So it's hard. It's easier for us to believe something is possible for somebody else, but it's not easy to believe it's possible for us. And as a result, you have to cultivate that mindset over time. And again, I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am wise, I'm a steward of the Most High. That's where that programming comes into play, because at some point in time, that new mindset is going to take root. And the longer you focus on it, it's going to have a compounding effect. Right. So the first couple of times you say something like that to yourself, it's going to feel silly. After doing it a month, it's going to feel like part of you. After that, it's going to feel like a compounding effect of you. And lo and behold, within a 12-month time frame, all of a sudden you're living that exact life.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got to get out of, this is where I think people have to get out of their own way. Right. And we all have different levels. Right. I'm in the process of another level of still getting out of my own way. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
But I'm further along 20 years from ago to 20 years now, right? I'm further along because of the mindset shifts, right? Someone who doesn't believe that they can earn 8 or 9 figures will never earn 8 or 9 figures. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, how did I learn to believe that I can earn 8 or 9 figures? Well, first of all, I had to believe that I can earn $1,000, then $10,000, then $100,000. And over time, your belief is increased with every limited success that you have, especially if that limited success has come at the end of a sacrifice. Or a suffering sacrifice, if you will.
Sure. Yeah. Now, did you? And that's really helpful, because I know a lot of us get trapped in that. This is the moment I'm in right now, and so this is my life for the rest of my life. And I've talked to so many people on this show that have experienced those moments of like, well, I lost $100,000, or I went this much into debt, or I lost this part of myself, or I had, but they've overcome it. So they've had those moments of just like transformation, and the pendulum swung. So when the pendulum swung for you, I know that, you went through a time where you were doing really well for a while early in your life, and then you lost it all. Yep. And then you got in, I think at that time you were homeless, right? And so that was more of that dark time where you could probably not envision yourself as a 9-figure entrepreneur.
Not even close. Not even close. But I will say this. I have learned that the quicker you can separate your identity from your outcomes, the quicker your outcomes come to you. Okay. So, a great example is I was, and I stumbled across this TV show on Netflix recently. It's about Conor McGregor. Obviously, he's one of the most profound MMA fighters that ever, I guess, been there. Yeah. Conor would obviously have a string of wins. He had a handful of losses, but when he would lose, it would really, really affect him, like for a while. Conor had the one thing that I think everybody has to cultivate, and it's that moment where this doesn't define me. This is a moment in time that's going to refine me. Right? Wow. So if you let a moment in time define you, then you're not going to refine it for the lesson that is hidden in it. You'll watch, if you look at Conor's career over the course of, there's probably 15 or 20 years now as an MMA fighter, he's become more mature, even though he's just as gritty, right? Yeah. He went from a time of being super soft to super hard and back and forth again. And now he's learning the balance of being hard and soft. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Yes. So I would say he's actually learning the essence of flow. Yeah. Right. Because again, he doesn't let the loss define him. I lose $100,000. I will be honest with the audience. I've lost millions of dollars on bad decisions, just being straight up. What I decided to do is not let that define me, even though in the moment it would have been far easier to say, this is who I am. I failed. I'm a failure. Right. Yeah. Yeah. The reality is no one is a failure. You just had a failure on a simple instance But the only way you stay there is if you stay down,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't
Right.
know a single person yet that has made it to the 8, 9 figures, even 10-figure category that hasn't gone through repeated issues of failure, success, failure, success, failure, success. And the most mature people that I know on the planet that are actually happy and healthy and whole don't tie their identity to their things. They tie their identity to the essence of becoming.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who are you becoming? Because nobody can take that stuff away from you. I can't take all the work that you've already done on yourself. Right? I can't take that away. I'll never be able to, no one can take that away from you. Right? That's the one thing that you can't lose. You can't lose who you become. You can lose stuff. You can lose relationships. You can lose businesses or whatever. But you're not going to lose the essence of the wisdom that you develop over time. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those that a lot of friends of mine that I've worked with that used to struggle with anxiety, they would struggle with anxiety because they were always trying to control the outcome.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's
if you're trying to control something you can't control, it's going to create tension.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's tension that you don't need. So that's why I'm saying when it comes down to it, if you're going to create a new you, you're going to have to surrender to the aspirational identity hidden inside of you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, and speaking as someone who has anxiety and lives with it and experiences it every day, that is a truth bomb right there. I mean, we are trying to control outcomes, and it's just this obsessive nature. And yeah, the idea of letting go of the outcomes. I love the way you put it. Separate your identity from your outcomes. And I think your last part was your outcomes will start to come to you, right? Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful. And not always easy. So, obviously we're going to fail, and failure can be a path to success if we have the right relationship with it. Mm-hmm. How should we be? How should we build a relationship with failure? Because we don't want to fail, but we need to in some respects.
It needs to be a friend.
Needs to be a friend. Okay.
It needs to be a friend. I mean, it's simple. I've made numerous mistakes in business. A lot of the stuff that people pay attention to is obviously the success that comes with it or whatever. Yeah. I know the real story. If you were to go to StephenScoggins.com right now and go to the About page, you're going to see this little segment says, this is what everybody says. This is the real story. 1994 high school dropout. Yeah. And I do that intentionally because everybody has a story, right? Yeah. Everybody's got the essence of mistakes and heartache and things that didn't work out. Sometimes because of their choices, other times because of the choices of other people. Rather than repel against it, I would rather surrender to it and say, what can I learn from the process? Right. Viktor Frankl had a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And one of the things that I love that he said, all suffering ceases to exist once suffering has its meaning. Mm-hmm. The only way suffering gets its meaning is by the learning, right? So what did I learn from this experience? Well, this relationship crushed me. I had this, this broken heart, this crushed me. Okay, what happened? Well, I gave too much of myself to this category, or I didn't know my self-worth. I was a people pleaser. Like all these different things, they're designed to be tea leaves to give you insights into yourself. I'm a big believer that part of our existence here on this planet is to refine the soul that happens to operate within the body, right? You refine the soul by challenges, not by success. You see what I'm saying?
Right, yeah.
To me, success is a byproduct of refining yourself over time. So if you're pushing against it all the time, you're trying to stay out of pain, you're trying to stay out of discomfort, you're trying to stay out of arm's reach of that stuff, then you're actually doing yourself a disservice, and you're probably holding yourself back 5 or 10 years of where you could be if you just said, okay, I'm in the moment. The moment doesn't feel good, but I'm okay. Yeah. I'm okay. I'm going to get through this. I'm looking, where are my hidden tea leaves? Where are my hidden things? Okay, I learned this. I learned that. I learned that. Oh, that taught me about not to build relationships with that type of person, or this taught me not to make this financial decision anymore. It's the repelling of adversity that holds most people back, not the fact that they're not capable of success. They're just not willing to put in the work and the effort to get through it, to get to it.
Yeah. So that's so, I mean, I'm so glad you say that, because, a lot of what I try and share on this show is the idea that we are constantly distracting ourselves by fighting fear, and that's where we get in trouble. And if we can just let that go and start to embrace it, we can look at it as the signal for where we have an opportunity to grow. Yeah. And I will tell you that And it sounds like this has been true for you, but the biggest shift in my life came when I started to do that. I mean, just like leveling up, realizing that uncomfortable situations are going to happen, and just, learning from those experiences and continuing to grow. It is not easy, but I mean, it's worth it.
What's really wild? And I hope your audience gets to spend some one-on-one time with you.
Yeah.
As someone who professes that they struggle with anxiety on a daily basis, when you're in your presence, you sense peace.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Which is totally nuts to me.
Yeah.
In fact, I would challenge anyone that says I struggle with anxiety on a regular basis to stop telling yourself that. Instead, hey, I'm working through. I'm learning lessons from this circumstance. Like, reframe that entire thing, and much like the earlier mantra that I mentioned before, reframe it where the mantra overtakes the existing programming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because if you wake up and you're thinking and you identify with, I struggle with anxiety, or I struggle with bipolar, I struggle with this, I struggle with that, then you're going to have less hope that it can be conquered.
That's a great point. And thank you for that feedback, because I do that. I mean, my default is like, I feel awkward when I talk to people because I feel this sense that all of my life I've told myself that I have social anxiety. But I also know from experience that, in working with people like you and being around other people, that that I do have hopefully a connective personality. So,
absolutely.
So I should tell that, story. So I'm very grateful for that feedback.
I would tell you that you don't come across as socially awkward in any way, shape, or form. You come across as a very genuine human being who's actually got a commitment to serve. And that's whether you're on stage, or that's whether you're hanging out at a private dinner, or whether we're actually hanging out as a group of speakers, or you're meeting with the audience, or I've had the pleasure and the benefit of watching you operate in those moments where maybe you felt like they were uncomfortable, but everybody else around you was vibing with you and learning from you, right? Making sure that they had the aspirations to become more of what they see.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of leveling up. And I mean, I think you're bringing up another great point here is right now I'm having a conversation with an amazing human being that I've had the fortune of meeting because we put ourselves in communities that allow ourselves to connect like this. And that's a huge power, because that helps us to lift each other up.
That's right.
And I know that was something that you learned, through your mentor, Steve Myrick. Myrick. Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. And how, so what was that, what was that relationship like? How did you get into it? How did you have the courage or take the steps to start to learn from that mentor and change your life for the better? Because I'm sure that's one of the ways that you leveled up your life.
Well, first of all, there's an old adage that says, when you're ready, the mentor will show itself, or will be in front of you, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
I would say in my case specifically, I had undiscovered, untapped potential that my mentor happened to see in me. He didn't want me to live the life that my father had lived. And so therefore he interjected himself into my life in such a way that offered value to my life. Now, I will tell you, I'm sure I drove him crazy, because not everything that he told me that I do right away. In fact, it wasn't until I became homeless that I actually was like, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, I've had this kind of level of direct mentorship from somebody I admire and trust, and I'm not doing anything with any of the skills that he taught me. And I say that because most mentors are looking for someone they can mentor, to be honest. Okay.
Right.
Most of us aren't open-minded to mentors because we're too stuck in who we are. We're too focused on we're basically in our own way. As a result, one of the things that you're going to discover is all mentors, and this ends up being a life truth, doesn't matter who says it, because a lot of people have said it a lot of different ways now. Most mentors, reason they gravitate towards a mentee is because the mentee reminds them of themselves at the same time and duration in life.
Yeah.
I learned that. So when I wrote my first book, this is like 2014, Steve Myrick had passed away. His widow was still alive. And I'd hired a ghostwriter to help me go and validate, because my story, if you like read it in a book or on paper, it's like, there's no way this guy lived this life.
Yeah.
Like, it's like Forrest Gump or Joseph from the Bible. There's no way. And so I had to do a major fact check. So I hired this guy, and I said, he's like, well, I'm gonna go talk to these different people. One of them happened to be his widow. And I said, will you do me a favor? Will you please ask her why he helped me? Like, when I say help me, like, much like Jesus chasing after the one sheep, like this guy pursued me.
Yeah.
Like even after I basically said, I don't want your help, or I don't value your help, or, that kind of thing, he kept pursuing me over time. And as a result, he goes and meets with her. Of course, he gets the backstory about a lot of different things. And I said, well, did you ask her about why Steve helped me? And she said, he says, actually, I did. So what'd she say? She said, all he said was that he saw himself in you.
Wow.
Right. So I say all that to say that if you're not open to the possibility of a new future, the new future will never find you. If you open yourself up to the opportunity for a new future, then inevitably what actually happens is you will start to encircle yourself around people who are already where you want to be and beyond. You mentioned that group that there's a couple of different groups that we run in different circles with. All of them share one core value. We all want to serve people at scale.
Yeah.
We all want to take whatever we've experienced and we want to package it up and give it back to the world in a way it benefits the world. Okay. That's one common shared value. The other thing too is that we're all much more selective about the circles that we're in. So the circles that I'm in, they have to be at my level or above for me to invest significant time, energy, and talent, and resources in those categories, unless I'm teaching.
Yeah.
And the reason I do that is because I've realized over time that if I don't encircle myself with people who are like-minded and heading down the same trajectory or a version of the same trajectory, I'm going to get off track. I think one of the falsehoods of life is us believing that we're somehow a savior and we can somehow come in here and just save the world when we're one people in six. Yeah. And all the other five people are knuckleheads and they're doing stupid stuff and they're not on our track at all. And we feel like we can go and influence them. And it doesn't take but 3 or 6 months and they've influenced us.
Yeah. Wow. And I think one of the great things that you kind of pointed out there subtly was that when those mentors are actually even looking at us for to be a mentee or to their people to be they see themselves in them, which means that at one point in time they were struggling through the same thing and now they're successful. That's the beautiful thing. I mean, if that is such a God thing right there. I mean, it's such a beautiful faith thing. And now you're at a point in your life. I mean, I know that we can go on for hours and I want to be, respectful of your time, but I know that your goal now is obviously you're helping people out. You're at that place in your life where you've built your businesses, you've built successful, businesses, and you're building these brands and you're starting to help people. Is that where your vision lies now? Is how you can better serve? How is that showing up in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a natural evolution of someone who redefines who they are. Yeah. Right. So there's a process of taking inventory. This is who I am. There's a process of setting a goal or an expectation. This is who I want to become. Then there's the action steps of doing the work that it takes. And some of it's very painful, to be honest, like to really openly look in your closets and your shadows and your skeletons. And where did this come from? And where did that come from? Is this serving me? Is this not serving me? Yeah. Get rid of this. These people over here don't need to be in my life and all these kinds of things. The next evolution of the process is a level of mastery. In fact, I used to have a piece of content that I used to teach. I used to call it the 7 levels of life mastery. Level 1 is awareness. Level 2 is actually basically taking action on that awareness. Number 3 is mentorship. Number 4 is typically what we refer to as the work that's kind of around the mentorship piece. The next one is emergence. That's when you're starting to develop a level of mastery. And the final step is mastery. At the level of mastery, if you're doing what I believe that faith calls you to do, once you reach the level of mastery, it's your job to go back and hand out lifelines to those many people who want to accept them, not ones that you want to accept or you want to bring with you. You can give the lifeline out to everybody. It's your job to work with those that grab a hold of the rope. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So the 7 levels of life mastery is kind of like the hierarchy of the transition of transforming yourself from the inside out. Everything from taking inventory and becoming immediately aware all the way to the mastery stage of a specific piece. You'll repeat that 7 levels repeatedly over the course of your life. As a result, by the time you get to the stage in life where we're at, you're going to find that you have a yearning. And I mean, it's a yearning. It's not I've tried to lay down this thought leadership stuff probably 4 or 5 times, and it always finds me.
Yeah.
Right. It's always like, no, I gave it away. I gave it up for a year and a half. I found myself at a coffee shop and then meeting somebody one time, one-on-one, and then watching them get wrecked and transform their life in a 30-minute conversation.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And then you go and get on stages, and then you see that happen in 10 people's lives, 100 people's lives, 1,000 people's lives. And you're like, I can't hide this.
Right.
If I hide this, I'm doing a disservice to the world.
Right.
Now, so I think it's a natural evolution of becoming, right?
Right.
A servant-minded leader, a servant-minded impactor, if you will. I'll also cognizant that if you try to get up there and serve too early, then it ends up becoming about you and not about them.
Yeah.
What I've learned now is even when I go to speak is I spoke at an event for a good friend of mine, Amberly Lago. I had this entire presentation set up. I was going to do this, killer keynote. 3 minutes before I get on stage, I feel something in my spirit says, "Oh no, you need to talk about this." Yeah. Scrapped it all. Literally I literally just had 3 slides the entire time. Brought a big brick on stage and talked about focus and intensity, and then kind of like some of the construction stuff that kind of come up. I say all of that as a long-winded answer to say, if you'll do the work now, you'll receive the benefit of doing the work now, and you'll create the yearning to do the work for other people or do the work with other people. So I think it's a natural trajectory of people who have been through difficult things to get to a point where the difficult things no longer own them, but they own the difficult things and the lessons they learned to then give it to the world. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's so powerful. And kind of going back to the one thing you said when you had, when you were talking about when you try and help people, they need to take the line too. I mean, there's elements of that from recovery and Alcoholics Anonymous.
Dude, I wasted so much time trying to help people that didn't want the help. It's not even funny.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I mean that that's the thing about anybody that wants to get help. There are 2 types of people out there. There are the people that when a hand is brought down, they try and pull it down with them, or there's the people that take the hand and want to help themselves up. Yeah. And you have to be willing. And I love that part of it. And it's so important. And so is that, so with Scoggins International, I mean, you started with, building a construction company and you built that up to a very, very successful business. And then you made a big pivot to media, right? that's a unique pivot. Was that the nature of?
Well, here's the crazy thing is I don't know how unique it was. Somebody gave me a correlation and I'll share with you in a minute. The construction industry specifically, it taught me how to use my hands, then use my head, then use my heart. Okay? Yeah. I also learned that my construction company is not a construction company. It's actually a personal development company masquerading as a construction company.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I believe that any business that's positioned that way is going to have a better team culture as well as a lot better success. Okay. I found myself, as I would learn things, I would teach them to my team, and that it tended to benefit the entire team. Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah.
The construction company finally got to a place where most of my influence was not needed as much because it was out of the entrepreneurial startup stage. Okay. I am by nature a visionary, more visionary than anything else. Okay. At a certain point in time, the visionary has to take 2 steps back and let his integrators and his operators take the reins to build things correctly and safely where no one gets hurt around the thing. And then the visionary gets to go start new things. Okay. When I took the content that I've been teaching myself and then teaching my team, I realized that it was actually benefiting them, their spouses, and their families. And I was like, well, wait a minute. If this works for them, then maybe this works for other people. And I like serving people, I like helping people. So let's do that. Okay. So we created what used to be called the Journey Principles, and we rebranded as the Scoggins International probably 2 years ago. And I discovered something else by accident. As you know, I have a live event studio, and we do free live events. We do paid live events. We do all kinds of live events because live events help me change my life. So I'm a big believer in live events and speakers and whatnot. And I realized that there are a lot of mission-driven messengers, as to coin a phrase from one of our mutual friends, Rory Vaden, that he talks about all the time, that have yet to be discovered. I personally believe that some of the most powerful voices that people need to listen to haven't been discovered yet or aren't notable yet. And I believe you're going to watch a huge batch of the would-be gurus fall away while you watch developing guides begin to take stages and center stages, because the difference of the heart is, of course, closely aligned. So as a result, I created a media portion of our company that actually helps create media resources for people that I believe can change the world.
Yeah.
Right. Through a core message. Right.
Right.
Obviously, you're one of those people. The second thing that I accidentally discovered is that we're so good at events that we were able to attract some A-listers into some of their book launches. And when we did that, we did the event almost like a favor, like for some of our mutual friends and stuff like that. And like at that level, like if you screw up, like you're toast, right? You either have to knock it out of the park or fall apart. Those are your two options.
Yeah.
We were very fortunate. We were able to knock it out of the park for this particular launch. And I had this other interesting epiphany. I was like, you know what? I actually enjoyed doing that. And I wasn't even one of the core speakers on the stage, right?
Yeah.
But I enjoyed putting together all the details, so much so that the thought leader was able to come in, fly in on his jet, come take the stage, bring his friends in. They all spoke. We all had a great time, and they hopped on a plane and left. So we prepared it. We produced it. We shot it. We did all of it. We edited it. All of that kind of stuff. And we even cleaned up after the fact, after everybody left, right?
Yeah.
I discovered that I love live events, doing for other people just as much as we like doing for ourselves. Okay. So that's the other lane. And then there's the third piece of Scoggins International that's very much who I am, which is the empowering education. I believe that what the world needs more than anything else is thought leaders who believe light and love and hope and empowerment and encouragement and inspiration. I believe that all of them should take the stage right now more than anything else in the world, because there's so much darkness, so to speak. And I say darkness as in lack of hope, unfulfillment, unworthiness, unlovedness, issues with race, issues with hate, like that stuff. Like if we have enough people that radiate light, love, and compassion to stand up and speak boldly, then we can change the world. Now, one person can't do it alone, but enough voices saying the same thing in similar or different ways, but aimed in the same direction, creates a megaphone. Right?
Yeah.
And that's where the empowering education comes from. So we do Unstoppable Startup, which is where I help 6-figure entrepreneurs build 8-figure empires. We have Transform You Live, which is all about life mastery and kind of helping you level up. We have Level Up Live, which is my heart. That's the free event that I love giving to the audience, because they have no clue. They're coming to a free event and they're like, I would have paid like $1,000 to be here.
Right.
I'm like, well, next time you can, kind of thing. So, that's kind of that's the heart behind Scoggins International. Scoggins International is designed to be a megaphone for hope.
Yeah, I love that message. I mean, that's such a powerful message that we need right now, because I'm with you. I mean, the dark, I mean, whether or not there's more dark in the world right now, or the message, it's certainly amplified. And that darkness is amplified through social, through all sorts of different media. But the messages that we share,
good people aren't standing up.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And it's hard. I mean, I talked about this in an earlier podcast that it's hard to stand up when you're to be an optimist, because it is so easy to be a cynic in this world. It is so easy and lazy to be. Yeah.
That's a choice.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. I choose to believe that what I do matters. Okay. Yeah. I have evidence to prove that what I do matters.
Yeah.
Okay. I would dare say that every person that I'm associated with also has evidence to prove that what they do matters. I just want them to say what I do matters.
Yeah.
Because if I can get them to agree and say what I do matters, then they're going to go out and do great things in the world. And with enough of us out there doing work that matters, all of a sudden we create a movement that matters, and people's lives are better because of it.
Yes.
And I fully accept that at certain times there'll be a drastic amount of pushback, because there seems to be forces that are trying to suppress and oppress. At the same time, I believe that they're more bark than bite. And I believe, again, if I get enough people to stop being afraid of doing work that matters and putting good into the world, over time, you will overtake that darkness.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so good. And such a great message. And the media that you're putting out on social, on YouTube, on the Unstoppable podcast, which is incredible. And it's attracting many listeners. And I mean, just the work you're doing is incredible. I had the opportunity to be on your stage again to do that demo reel and join many of these people that you're inspiring to put their messages out there and amplify those messages. And I'm so grateful for that. Can you and with regard to the Unstoppable Startup program that you shared about, that's helping entrepreneurs build to 8-figure businesses and even start their own kind of process to build to that megaphone that you're building. Can you share a bit about that and how people can find it and get a hold of it?
Oh gosh, well technically it's a secret. We haven't released it.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we did a taping in August of 2022 for the Unstoppable Online that will launch, I think, in August.
Yeah. Okay.
Of 2023. It's designed to be a low cost resource because if I think back to the entrepreneur that I was, every dollar mattered, and I wasn't against buying training, but if the training was effective, then I saw it as a waste. So what I've done is I've taken 25 years of experiences and frameworks and processes and systems, and I've laid them out in a module by lesson. Like literally, it's like over 47 hours of content total. That all you have to do is watch a video, take action. Watch the next video, take action. Watch the next video, take action. And then recently, what we're doing, at least for the first year, is I'm actually going to jump in to a lot of our community groups and actually teach them one-on-one. So it's a lot of different cool things that we're doing. The easiest way to do it is just keep your eye on StephenScoggins.com for the actual release. We'll do a soft release, obviously, a little ahead of time so we can get some folks to help us break the system. Yeah. Right. And then worst case scenario, you can always find me on Instagram, which is where I spend most of my time.
Yeah, and there's a ton of value on Stephen's Instagram, which is amazing. I mean, lots of stage time, lots of gold nuggets dropped there. And if you go to StephenScoggins.com, I found this really cool. He's got a timeline of his real story, which shows kind of where he came from, where he is now, and how he's developed. And it's truly inspirational. I mean, Stephen's got an incredibly inspirational story. And yes, so they can find you on Instagram. That's at Stephen Scoggins. Right?
Yeah, Stephen Scoggins. It's Steve. I'm verified, so it's the only Stephen Scoggins with a blue check mark. Yeah. I fortunately finally got that nailed down, so I could stop having people impersonate me trying to sell Bitcoin to everybody. Because that was a mess. I want to touch back on the inspirational story side.
Yeah.
I share my story as not to be an inspiration, but to be a beacon of light, so you can create your own inspiration. I believe that your story is just as strong as my story. The only difference is we're talking to different people, right? So if I can be vulnerable and transparent and be honest about where I came from, where my backstory was, the mistakes that I made, and the doofus stuff I did, and I've made stupid decisions with zeros. I've mentioned that several times. And then my hope is that you will have the courage to be authentic and open and honest and transparent, because that's what people gravitate towards. People are not gravitating towards fancy cars and houses and airplanes. And if they do, it's not for very long, right? Your journey has to have meaning. And the only way you give it meaning is by being authentic with yourself and then authentic with people around you.
That's such a great message. And thank you for sharing your message, because it is so important, and it's helping. It's helping millions, and I'm grateful for all that you do, Stephen. And thank you for inspiring me, because I was lucky enough to meet you in my book, like launch process, by being able to be on your show, meeting you through brand builders, getting on the stage with brand amplifiers. And it's just been such a blessing to meet you. And I'm grateful for you showing me some light in this world and showing the world light. And thank you for joining me. Find Stephen at StephenScoggins.com. Follow him there. Follow him on Instagram. And thanks for being here, Stephen. I really appreciate it.
Love you, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
I love you too, man. Thank you all for joining us today. And we will see you next time. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.